It started on a night when the wind didn't howl, it whispered. The sky above Elk Hollow was black, not just with the absence of stars, but with something deeper, heavier. It wasn't just darkness, it was presence. It clung to the windows, breathed into the trees, and made the air feel like it had weight. Emily and Michael Warren had just moved into their fixer-upper on the edge of the woods, a property Michael inherited from an uncle no one ever really talked about. The house was old, with walls that creaked like they remembered too much, and rooms that smelled of soil and time. Still, they were happy. After 3 years of failed fertility treatments, countless tears, and whispered arguments in the kitchen, they needed a fresh start. They hadn't planned on getting pregnant, not here, not yet. But something about that first night changed things. Emily woke just past midnight, sweat clinging to her skin, her nightgown tangled around her thighs. She turned to Michael, who was still fast asleep beside her. The room felt off. The moon should have been pouring light through the window, but everything outside was pitch black. No crickets. No wind. Just silence, and the sense that something had walked over her grave. She felt something move beneath her skin. It wasn't pain. Not exactly. It was more like a flutter, but lower than where she'd expect, deeper than her belly, down in her womb. And then she heard it. A wet, gurgling whisper, like someone trying to speak through thick, blood-filled lungs. The sound came from her abdomen. She screamed. Michael shot up, grabbing her shoulders. Emily. What is it? What's wrong? She couldn't find the words. Her hands clutched at her belly, tears brimming in her eyes. But by the time he turned on the bedside lamp, everything was still again. No sound. No movement. She tried to laugh it off. I think I just had a nightmare. A really bad one. But that was a lie. Because whatever it was hadn't gone away. It had nested. A week later, they confirmed the pregnancy. Emily sat frozen in the clinic while the doctor cheerfully printed ultrasound images. You're just about 6 weeks along, Dr. Ayres said. Everything looks healthy, heartbeat strong, growth is right on schedule. You're incredibly lucky, you know. With your history, this is almost a miracle. Emily nodded, but something about the doctor's face made her uneasy. Her smile twitched at the corners, just a little too wide. Her eyes lingered too long on the ultrasound. She said, miracle, the way some people say, accident. That night, Emily dreamed of blood. It seeped from the walls. It gushed from the ceiling fan. It leaked from between her thighs. In the dream, she stood in the nursery they hadn't even built yet. The crib was ancient, blackened wood twisted into cruel, spiked shapes. A mobile spun above it, except instead of stars or clouds, it was made of teeth. She walked toward the crib, trembling. Her hands felt heavier with each step. Something was growing under her skin, bulging, pulsing. When she reached the edge of the crib, she looked down. A fetus stared back at her, submerged in a basin of thick, dark amniotic fluid. It had eyes. Too many of them. And teeth. Rows of needlepoint teeth that clicked as it smiled at her. You let me in, it whispered. You opened the door. Emily woke to find blood between her legs. She screamed. Michael rushed her to the ER, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The doctors couldn't find the source. Some spotting in early pregnancy is normal, they said. Especially with IVF history. Nothing to worry about. The fetus is stable. But Emily knew better. She felt it. Inside her. It wasn't normal. It wasn't human. And every night, the dreams returned. In the second month, things got worse. Michael started noticing strange smells in the house, like rot, like burnt meat and sulfur. He checked the pipes, cleaned the drains, even paid a plumber to inspect the septic tank. Nothing helped. Emily developed cravings, not for pickles or chocolate, but for raw meat. She'd stand at the kitchen counter late at night, chewing on rare steak, blood dripping down her chin like a feral animal. Her skin changed. Paler. Almost translucent in places, as if her veins wanted to be seen. Her eyes darkened at the corners, and her pupils seemed different. Wider. Almost reptilian. Michael began sleeping on the couch, not because of a fight, but because she scared him. He didn't say it. He didn't need to. Sometimes she'd wake up to find him staring at her from the hallway, watching through the cracked door like a man afraid to enter a cage. Then came the night with the mirror. Emily was brushing her hair in the bathroom. The light flickered once, then twice. And then the reflection smiled at her. She hadn't smiled. Her lips were still. But the image in the mirror grinned, slow and sick, with black gums and teeth too sharp, too many. She screamed and smashed the mirror with her hairbrush. Blood seeped from the cracks in the glass. They tried to talk about it. Michael begged her to see someone, a specialist, maybe a priest. He was losing sleep, losing his mind. But Emily couldn't leave. She felt it. The thing growing inside her was territorial. Whenever she stepped too far from the house, her stomach would seize in writhing, clawing pain. As if it was punishing her. As if it didn't want to leave. Then they found the book. It was buried in the basement, beneath rotted floorboards and blackened wood. Michael was storing old boxes when his foot fell through. Below was a small, brick chamber that hadn't been on the blueprints. The smell hit him like a corpse wrapped in gasoline. He gagged and climbed down with a flashlight. The chamber was small, barely big enough to stand. In the center was a circle made of bones and dried flowers, covered in chalky runes. And in the center of that was a book. Bound in leather that felt wrong. Oily. Like something still alive. He brought it upstairs, despite everything in him screaming not to. The cover was blank, but inside were pages of ritual text. Latin, Aramaic, diagrams of wombs with eyes, fetuses with horns, birth canals lined with thorns. One phrase kept repeating. The seed must be fed. The mother must obey. Emily stared at it for a long time. Her hand trembled as she touched the pages, like the book remembered her. She spoke aloud. This isn't our child. Michael said nothing. Because he knew. He'd started seeing it too. The shadows in the hallway that moved when no one was there. The reflection in the TV at night, flickering with eyes that didn't belong to them. And the heartbeat. It was no longer only audible during appointments. It echoed through the walls at night. Thump thump. Thump thump. But it wasn't steady. It giggled. By the start of the third month, Emily's stomach bulged unnaturally. Too fast. Too swollen. She couldn't walk without pain. Her ribs cracked when she bent over. Michael tried to record one of her night terrors, but what he captured was worse. On the video, Emily lay motionless in bed, then suddenly arched backward, mouth wide, eyes rolled back. She whispered in a guttural voice. The gate opens. The blood remembers. I am coming. Then silence. And then the baby kicked. Hard. So hard the sheets moved on their own. Michael dropped the camera. They stopped pretending everything was fine. Michael took time off work. They boarded up the nursery. Emily refused to leave the bedroom. Every night, she wept. I didn't want this, she whispered. I don't know what's inside me. It's not ours. Michael held her tightly, shaking. Then whose is it? She looked him in the eyes. And what she said next chilled his soul. It's his. In the attic, they found old photos of Michael's uncle, the man who left them the house. He wasn't alone in most of them. He stood beside a cloaked figure, always wearing a black robe with no face visible. Behind them, in some photos, were altars. Symbols drawn in blood. Pregnant women chained by the wrists. Emily turned one photo over. In faded ink, it read. The Offering. Elk Hollow, 1939. The bloodline continues. She clutched her belly. It kicked again. This time, it laughed. Not in her mind. Not in the air. But from inside her. Michael Warren hadn't left the attic in over an hour. Dust thickened in the air like ash from a funeral pyre. The old photographs sat sprawled across the floorboards, images that should have yellowed with age but looked like they were taken yesterday, sharp, vivid, and wrong. In the corner of one frame, just behind a circle of chanting men, stood a naked, pregnant woman with a swollen belly and a gaping mouth, her face contorted in silent, frozen agony. She looked exactly like Emily. He didn't want to believe it. It couldn't be. But the eyes, those glassy, empty eyes, they were hers. The same shape. The same distant sorrow. Michael backed away, heartbeat thundering in his throat, and almost tripped over the dusty wooden chest he'd ignored earlier. Its surface was engraved with a strange symbol, a jagged eye in the center of a womb-like oval, wrapped in coiled thorns. The latch wasn't locked, but it felt resistant. As though something inside didn't want to be found. He opened it anyway. Inside was a collection of items that no sane person would ever keep, animal bones wrapped in human hair, old cloth stained with rust-colored blood, a fetus-like doll with missing limbs and teeth where its eyes should have been. And at the very bottom, a journal. Its leather binding was cracked and brittle, but the ink was fresh, the words frantic and erratic. She came to me in the dark again. Said the bloodline must continue. That the child needs a vessel, and the pact must be sealed with flesh. I thought the house was dead. I thought it was over. But it's still here. It never leaves. The seed grows, and it must feed. It must be born. Michael didn't realize he was crying until a tear splashed the page. He shut the journal and ran. Downstairs, Emily was in the bathtub. She hadn't called for him. She hadn't moved from that spot in hours. The water had long turned cold, the porcelain rim lined with veins of black slime, like algae from something ancient and forgotten. Her belly rose above the waterline, too large for a woman only 12 weeks pregnant. She stared at the ceiling, lips barely parting. Did you know, she said quietly, that in some cultures, the mother isn't considered human anymore once the child is chosen? Michael froze at the doorway. Chosen? He asked, voice cracking. She didn't respond immediately. Only turned her head slowly to face him. Her eyes were wide, black-ringed, pupils nearly swallowing the iris. I've been hearing him in my dreams, she said. He doesn't speak words, he scratches them into the walls of my sleep. He says I'm the door. The door to what? To him. The one who lives beneath. The Father. That night, Michael called Father Holbrook. The priest was old and shaky, and the town considered him a relic. But he remembered things no one else dared speak of. You said your uncle lived in Elk Hollow, the priest rasped through the phone. Then I can't help you. What? Michael nearly shouted. Why the hell not? Because that land is tainted. Your uncle, he was part of a congregation that made pacts with things far older than the devil. They didn't worship Satan. They worshipped what came before. Before what? The priest's voice trembled. Before God. Michael felt ice crawl down his spine. They called it Drawleth, the stillborn God. It can't walk the earth unless it's birthed through flesh. It needs a womb. A bloodline. Your family has always been tied to it. You were chosen long before you were born. Michael hung up, heart pounding like war drums. He turned to Emily, and found her smiling. She hadn't been smiling in days. She sat at the kitchen table, cradling her belly, humming a tune Michael didn't recognize. It was off-key, ancient-sounding, like a lullaby sung in a dead tongue. "You're late," she whispered. "For what?" "The naming." She giggled. "He's ready to be named. He told me in my sleep." Michael stepped back. "Emily, what are you talking about?" She tilted her head. "Don't you want to know your son's name?" Michael's throat tightened. "He's not our son." Her smile dropped. "Don't say that." "He's not," Michael repeated, backing away. "He's something else. Emily, this thing, it's using you. You're sick. We need to." A violent pressure slammed into his chest and sent him flying back against the wall. He gasped, clutching his ribs. He couldn't move. The air thickened. Emily hadn't touched him, she hadn't even stood up. But something in the room had. Later, he found scratches on the walls of the nursery. They hadn't built one, not officially, but something in the house had created it. The old guest room now held a crib made from gnarled wood and rusted nails. The wallpaper peeled away in long strips, revealing symbols beneath, etched into the plaster like scars. Michael ran his hand across one of the symbols. It burned his palm. In the corner sat a toy box. He opened it and immediately vomited. Inside were dead birds. Mice. A still wet rabbit head. All arranged carefully, like offerings. And lying atop the mess, was the sonogram. It pulsed. Emily's body began to reject normalcy. Her skin blistered if she touched holy water. Her voice changed mid-sentence, warping into inhuman tones before returning. Her cravings became animalistic, she began to chew raw bones, whispering, "He needs calcium for the skeleton." Michael tried to record her again. This time, when he played it back, the footage was gone, replaced with static and a high-pitched shriek that made blood pour from his nose. The baby moved constantly now. Not with kicks, but with twisting. Michael saw it once. Through her skin. A tiny hand, wrong in shape and size, pressed against her stomach from the inside. It had claws. He made the decision to end it. He didn't tell her. He just waited until she was asleep, he thought she was, and crept into the bedroom with the syringe from the emergency vet clinic down the road. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was murder. But whatever was inside her wasn't a baby. He couldn't let it be born. He stood over her, needle trembling in his hand, whispering, "I'm sorry. I love you. I love you, but I can't let this thing take you." He never got the chance. Emily opened her eyes, and they weren't hers. They were pitch black. Endless. And they knew. The house screamed. Not Emily. The house. Every wall, every pipe, every window let out a wailing, ear-shattering cry like a chorus of dying infants. The lights burst. Glass exploded from every picture frame. Michael dropped the needle. Emily rose without touching the floor. She hovered, belly glowing red beneath the stretched skin, veins crawling like worms across her stomach. "It's too late," she said in a voice layered with thousands. "He is almost here." Michael ran. Not from her, but into the woods. The screams followed him. Not physical, but in his head. The trees bent toward him, watching, whispering in a language that made his bones hurt. He fell. And when he looked up, he was no longer in the forest. He was underground. In a room carved of stone and flesh. The walls breathed. In the center stood a statue, a grotesque, eyeless fetus carved from bone and wrapped in chains. It wept blood. And below it, in the dirt, a grave. Fresh. He saw his own name etched on the crude wooden cross. Michael Warren. Beloved vessel. The dirt beneath his feet moved. Something was trying to claw its way out. He woke up in bed. Gasping. Soaked in blood. Emily was gone. The bed beside him was soaked through, crimson and reeking. The sheets were shredded. Drag marks led from the room down the hallway. And on the wall, written in blood. "He is crowning." Michael followed the trail. Down the hallway. Down the stairs. Into the basement. The air was thick and wet, buzzing with flies and the distant sound of a baby giggling. When he reached the bottom, he saw Emily. She was on her knees in the center of a chalk circle, surrounded by bones and candles. Her body convulsed with unnatural rhythm, stomach bulging outward and inward as if something inside was trying to dig its way out. She looked up at him, mouth stretching impossibly wide. "He's hungry, Michael." Blood splashed the floor. Then, the sound. A crack. A snap. And a squelch. Emily screamed, not from her mouth, but from everywhere. Her stomach split open horizontally like a grotesque smile. And from within. Something began to crawl out. It wasn't a baby. It had too many limbs. Too much hair. A skull too elongated, eyes too large and luminous. Its umbilical cord writhed like a living serpent, wrapping around Emily's arms, pulling her closer. It looked at Michael. And smiled. The thing that emerged from Emily wasn't a newborn. It wasn't even close. Michael couldn't breathe. It stood, in the blood-soaked chalk circle, slick and steaming, swaying as if listening to a sound only it could hear. Its legs were twisted like branches, but strong. Its spine curved unnaturally, protruding from the skin in ridges like broken stone. Black, wet cords hung from its back like tendrils, pulsing as though alive. Its face, God, its face was the worst. Too smooth. No nose. No ears. Only two enormous black eyes, glistening like oil, and a slit for a mouth that stretched far too wide. The teeth inside were small, sharp, and many. It looked at Michael. Not like a child seeing its parent. Like a predator recognizing prey. Emily collapsed behind it, gasping, laughing through screams. "He's here," she sobbed. "He's here, Michael. Isn't he beautiful?" Michael shook his head, backing into the stairs. "Emily," he whispered, voice breaking, "what have you done?" She didn't respond. Her head slumped forward. Blood dripped from her mouth. She was still alive, but barely. The creature stepped closer to her, placing one clawed hand on her face with eerie tenderness. Its mouth stretched again, and it spoke, not with vocal cords, but with a sound that vibrated inside Michael's bones. "Mother, home." Then it turned to Michael, twitching with curiosity. "Father." Michael ran. He bolted up the stairs, slipping on blood and slamming into the doorframe. His shoulder dislocated with a sickening pop, but he didn't stop. He stumbled through the kitchen, kicked open the front door, and ran barefoot into the cold night, screaming into the darkness. The wind howled. The trees leaned. Something followed. Behind him, the house moaned like it was alive. Lights in the windows flickered with movement. Not people. Not shapes. Eyes. Blinking. Watching. Dozens of them. The porch light shattered as he crossed the driveway, cutting his feet on broken glass. The air was thick with rot. But he didn't care. He had to get out. Had to get help. Had to burn that house to the ground. He drove blindly, tires screeching, blood pouring down his arm. 20 minutes later, he reached the Elk Hollow Sheriff's Department, staggering inside like a man who'd climbed out of hell. "Please," he shouted. "My wife, my house, there's something in there, something not human." The deputy behind the desk blinked once. Slowly. Then another officer stepped in from the hallway. His name tag read, Deputy Holler. Michael pleaded, "You have to believe me, she gave birth to something. It's not a baby. It's a demon or something worse." Holler stared for a long moment, then asked quietly, "Was it born in the basement?" Michael's stomach turned cold. "What?" Holler looked to the other deputy, who slowly locked the front door. The air shifted. The fluorescent lights buzzed harder. "Your uncle ever tell you what happened here in 1939? Holler asked, his voice oddly calm. Michael backed toward the wall. "How do you know?" "We all know," Holler interrupted. "We've always known. Your family made the pact. Your bloodline agreed. You were meant to bring him into this world." Michael shook his head violently. "No. No, I didn't choose any of this." "You didn't have to," the deputy said. "You were born into it." Then the lights exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. The deputies began to hum, a low, dissonant chant. Michael screamed and hurled a chair into the window, shattering it. He leapt through, glass slicing his arms, landing hard on the pavement outside. Sirens began to wail, not from police cars, but from deep in the woods. Michael fled into the night, heart pounding. There was nowhere to run. The entire town was part of it. Back at the house, the thing that had been born didn't cry. It feasted. It crawled to Emily, now gasping shallow, broken breaths, and gently nestled beside her, wrapping its black cord-like appendages around her limbs. "Love," it whispered in 100 voices. Then it opened its mouth. Rows of sharp teeth glistened. Emily looked up. Tears rolled from her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. She didn't scream as it bit into her throat. Michael didn't sleep that night. He broke into an abandoned motel on the edge of town and locked himself inside the bathroom. His arms were shredded. His shoulder hung useless. His face was pale, streaked with dirt and dried blood. But he couldn't stop seeing it. His son. Not born. Summoned. Not human. Inheritor. He remembered what Father Holbrook had said. "It needs a womb. A bloodline. Your family has always been tied to it." He opened the journal he'd taken from the attic, flipping back to the torn pages at the end. There was a ritual written there, one not to summon, but to bind. He could barely read the symbols, but it mentioned something about the first flame, womb salt, and reversal through fire and blood. Michael knew what he had to do. He had to go back. He had to kill it. The house was alive when he returned. The windows pulsed with red light. Shadows danced along the lawn like fingers beckoning him closer. Every surface of the porch was slick with mucus and blood. The front door opened on its own. The smell hit him immediately, burnt flesh, spoiled milk, and something worse. Like the breath of something ancient. He stepped inside, heart in his throat, clutching the butcher knife he'd stolen from the motel kitchen. The walls were covered in symbols, painted in blood. The floor was littered with bones and broken teeth. Flies buzzed in heavy clouds, too large, too loud. And in the center of the living room, nestled in a nest of flesh and cloth, lay the creature. It was bigger now. No longer the size of a newborn. It was the size of a toddler, though its limbs were too long, its joints bending in the wrong places. It had grown horns. Small, curved, slick with afterbirth and bile. It looked up at him. Smiled. "Daddy." Michael screamed and charged. The knife plunged deep into its side. It shrieked, a high-pitched, soul-rattling sound that shook the furniture and shattered the glass. Michael stabbed again and again, blood spraying, black and thick like tar. The thing convulsed, claws raking across his chest, tearing deep gouges through his skin. Michael fell backward, choking on blood. The creature staggered, but it didn't die. It laughed. From every room in the house, they came. Shadows with glowing eyes. Crawling. Twisting. Whispering. Michael screamed as hands, wet, cold, and familiar, wrapped around his ankles. He looked down. Emily. But not as she was. Her face was flayed open. Her mouth filled with insects. Her eyes were gone. Yet she spoke. You can't stop him. He's inside you now, too. Michael kicked, broke free, and limped into the basement. Only one thing left to do. He'd burn it. Burn it all. He grabbed the gasoline cans they'd stored for the generator and began pouring them over the floor, the altar, the walls. The journal. The book. He struck the match. And as the flame caught, the fetus screamed. So did Emily. So did he. Because in that moment, Michael felt something inside his own body, something move. Low. Deep. Below the stomach. Something warm, twisting. Something growing. Michael Warren didn't remember crawling out of the burning house. He only remembered the sound. Not the roar of flames or the crack of wood, no, it was the scream. That unholy, flesh-curdling wail that rose from the basement, like a baby crying underwater, except layered with something older. It sounded like thousands of voices trapped inside the womb of the earth, screaming to be born. And when the house exploded behind him, throwing him 20 feet into the grass, those voices didn't stop. They moved into him. He lay there for hours, trembling, half-conscious, soaked in blood and gasoline. Skin blistered. Bones cracked. Smoke rose from the ruins of his home like a funeral pyre, but even as it burned, he knew. It hadn't died. It had relocated. To him. The next morning, he woke in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights. Sterile air. Machines beeping softly. For a brief, fragile second, he thought it had all been a nightmare. Until he looked down. His stomach was swollen. Michael sat up in a panic, gasping for breath. He tore at the hospital gown, his abdomen looked bloated, distended in a way no injury should cause. Veins bulged across his sides, black and thick, pulsing beneath translucent skin. He gagged. The nurse walked in just as he stumbled out of bed. "Oh. Sir, you're awake. Get me out of here," he shouted, backing away. "It's in me, I need help, it's in me." "Sir, please calm down." "It's in me," he screamed, clutching his stomach. Then something moved. Inside him. It kicked. They sedated him. Locked him in a psych ward. The doctor assigned to his case, Dr. Lorna Vess, was calm, patient, and almost too kind. She sat with him each morning, asking the same question. "Michael, why do you believe you're pregnant?" And every time, he tried to explain. He told her everything. The cult. The pact. The fetus. The burning house. Emily. The thing that crawled out of her body. The town's silence. The seed now inside him. But Dr. Vess only smiled sympathetically and wrote something on her clipboard. "I think you're processing trauma in a deeply symbolic way," she said. "Men often feel helpless during pregnancy. In your case, your wife's death has manifested in a delusion of shared gestation." "I'm not crazy," he whispered. "I believe you believe it," she replied. He stopped talking after that. He started drawing instead. With whatever he could find, pen ink, bits of food, his own blood, he scrawled symbols across the walls of his room. Spirals. Eyes. Wombs with teeth. Circles inside circles. His fingers worked constantly, possessed by an instinct older than him. At night, the symbols glowed faintly. And he heard it breathing inside him. 3 days in, his stomach began to change. It wasn't just swelling. It pulsed. The staff called it a severe inflammatory reaction, maybe internal bleeding or infection. But Michael knew better. It was the fetus. Growing. Rapidly. One night, he pulled back the bandages over his midsection and saw movement under the skin. Like fingers, reaching up. Pressing outward. He vomited black bile into the sink and collapsed. He had dreams. Not nightmares, visions. He saw Emily standing in the woods, her arms cradling something swaddled in flesh. Her eyes were empty sockets leaking milk-white tears. She whispered, "You're the next vessel, Michael. The last father." He tried to scream, but no sound came. Only the gurgle of liquid. Then the sky above cracked open, not like a storm, but like skin splitting. And from it emerged a womb. Vast. Cosmic. Pulsing. From it descended the stillborn God, a shapeless, infantile mass of limbs and mouths and eyes, all shrieking at once in joy and hunger. Michael felt his body lifting, offering itself. He woke in restraints. This time, even Dr. Vess looked disturbed. "Michael," she said carefully, "we ran some tests." He stared at her, silent. "There are anomalies in your blood. Elevated hormone levels. A mass in your abdominal cavity. But no tumor. No infection." She took a breath. "Your body is producing placental tissue." Michael smiled weakly. "I told you," he whispered. "It's growing." That night, the power went out in the ward. The lights flickered. The alarms failed. And from Michael's room came the sound of wet laughter. The cameras caught only static. But when the staff burst in, Michael was on the floor, drenched in blood, cradling his stomach and muttering in a language they didn't understand. He smiled up at them, lips cracked and bleeding. "He's learning," Michael whispered. "He's remembering." They put him in isolation. But it didn't stop. The dreams returned. The fetus spoke to him now, inside his mind, fluent in thoughts, whispering things he wasn't supposed to hear. "You are the gate. The womb is sacred. Even if it's male. We are remaking flesh." He saw flashes of other fathers. Other hosts. Men from ages past, writhing in candlelit chambers, giving birth to horrors beneath temples long buried. He saw bloodlines, twisting, infected families throughout time, all leading to him. The final father. Michael tore the IVs from his arms. He stopped eating. He scratched messages into his own skin with his nails. "He's inside me. Burn the blood. I'm the door. Seal me shut." But it was too late. On the 7th night, the birth began. Michael woke in agony, a deep, seismic pressure pressing outward from inside him. His bones cracked. His skin stretched. Veins ruptured. The pain was unholy. Staff rushed into the room as he screamed, a scream that shattered glass across the building. They thought it was a seizure. But Michael knew. He was crowning. A nurse stepped forward to stabilize him. She froze. Something was moving under the skin of his lower abdomen, like a serpent coiled beneath a thin sheet of plastic. And then, it pushed out. A lump. Bulging. Wriggling. Forcing flesh aside. Then came the blood. Gallons. It gushed from his mouth, nose, and the new opening being torn into his body. The doctor screamed. Michael arched his back, mouth open in silent horror, and the thing began to emerge from his midsection. It wasn't a baby. It was the same creature. But now, bigger. More defined. Its limbs slid out first, long, skeletal. Then its torso. Slime-covered. Its head dragged last, crowned in black bone, its eyes locked with Michael's. It didn't cry. It smiled. And in a voice that echoed across every wall in the ward, it whispered. "Father, thank you for delivering me." Then it ripped free, bursting the last of the tissue, leaving Michael collapsed in a pool of steaming blood, barely breathing. The creature stood on the hospital floor, still connected by a thick, pulsing cord that slithered like a tail. Everyone who looked at it screamed. 2 nurses clawed their eyes out. 1 dropped dead. The lights exploded. Sprinklers burst. And then it vanished. Gone. Like it had never been there. Only Michael remained. Barely alive. But still smiling. They declared him catatonic. Medically unexplainable. His stomach slowly shrank over the following days, but his skin remained pale, stretched, emptied. And he whispered one thing to every nurse who dared come close. "He's out now. He's inside you." The scream started again. Low. Muffled. Almost like sobs. Emily stood still in the hallway, her body trembling as the sound trickled from behind the wallpaper. Not from a room, not from a vent. From within the walls. She pressed her ear closer, hand braced flat against the faded floral print. The sobs turned to a rasping giggle, infantile and guttural, something only a creature mimicking a child would make. Her skin crawled. It was 3:33 a.m. again. Every night, the same time. Something always happened. She stepped back slowly, trying to calm her breathing, but the wall pulsed. Not figuratively, literally. The wallpaper bulged, like something was breathing underneath it. She stumbled back and gasped. "Marcus," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Marcus, wake up." Her husband ran from the bedroom, disoriented and shirtless, eyes wide with panic. "What? What is it?" She pointed. The wall. It was moving. Breathing. "There's something inside." Marcus cautiously approached, pressing his palm to it, but it was still now. Cold. Dry. "There's nothing here," he said gently, though his own voice was shaking. "You haven't slept in days, Em. Please. Lie down." "I'm not hallucinating," she snapped. "You heard the heartbeat too. You saw what was in the ultrasound. Something is happening to me, Marcus. Inside this house. Inside me." He looked down at her belly. She was nearly 6 months pregnant now, but the bump was wrong. Too pointed. Asymmetrical. And at night, it twitched and moved unnaturally, not like kicks, more like writhing. "I believe you," he said finally. "But we need help." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "From who? No doctor will believe us." Marcus hesitated. "There's one person. The woman I saw outside the clinic. The one who warned me. I found her again. Her name is Reverend Kira. She's different. But she knows things. She said this was a seed of evil, that we're part of something larger." "You never told me that," Emily said, hurt. "I didn't want to scare you more." She nodded, then turned back to the wall. The pulse had stopped. But the blood hadn't. A thin, almost invisible stream of black-red liquid was leaking from the crack near the ceiling, slow and syrupy, crawling down toward the floorboards like it had a mind of its own. Later that day. The Reverend's house looked like something out of another time, an old white chapel tucked into the woods, converted into a living space. The cross on the front had been broken, with vines crawling up its arms like snakes. Ravens circled above, cawing low. Marcus helped Emily from the car, and they approached the heavy wooden door. It opened before they could knock. Kira stood there, tall and thin, her black robe brushing the floor, a necklace of bones around her neck. "You came," she said, voice dry as dust. Emily clutched her belly protectively. What's happening to me? Kira stepped aside to let them in. You're carrying something that was never meant to be born. Inside the chapel, everything smelled of sage and ash. The pews were gone, replaced with bookshelves lined with tomes in languages Emily couldn't read, all of them hand-bound, stained, some covered in skin. She led them to the altar. A circle of salt had been drawn around it, and inside, a jar of blood floated in midair. Emily's breath caught. What is that? Kira answered, a fragment of a soul. It writhes when evil draws near. It's been shaking for days. Kira motioned for Emily to lie down on a makeshift table beside the altar. Emily hesitated. This isn't a trick, Kira said softly. You're past the point of science. You need to know what you're carrying. Emily lay down. The table was ice cold. Kira began to chant, whispering in an ancient tongue that made Emily's skin crawl. Her belly began to glow faintly, a deep, sickly violet, like bruised skin under blacklight. Then the image came. Projected into the air above her womb. A shadowy fetus, suspended in embryonic fluid, its limbs twitching and its face. It had no face. Only a twisted, gaping mouth that took up most of its head. Teeth lined every inch. Thousands of them. Gnashing, jerking, tasting the air. Then the heartbeat started. A fast, aggressive rhythm, too fast for any human heart. Emily screamed. She could feel it, the heartbeat wasn't inside her, it was underneath her. The baby had somehow shifted inside her body, sliding deeper into her spine, into her nerves, anchoring itself in places no fetus should be able to reach. Kira stopped chanting. Her face was pale. That thing is growing too quickly, she whispered. It's feeding off you. Emily sat up, sweating. Feeding off what? Kira met her gaze grimly. Your fear. Your soul. And others. What do you mean others? Tell me, have there been any deaths around you since the pregnancy? Emily froze. The neighbor's dog, mauled and half-eaten. The old woman next door, found hanging from her ceiling fan, her face clawed into a rictus grin. And then there was. My sister, Emily whispered. She came to visit. 4 months ago. She didn't even get to unpack. She left the same night. Kira asked gently. She vanished. Kira nodded. The fetus must feed. It needs blood, death, to sustain its growth. That's why it lashes out. That's why the house groans and bleeds. Can it be stopped? Marcus asked, fists clenched. Kira was silent. Then finally, there is one way. But it is dangerous. That night. Emily couldn't sleep. The walls were whispering again. Not words, just sounds. Wet, gurgling, infantile sounds, like a newborn trying to mimic human language. Marcus was downstairs talking to Kira, but she could hear the buzzing in her skull. It was back. She walked into the nursery, which they hadn't touched in weeks. The crib sat in the corner, a thin layer of dust covering its bars. She reached to wipe it. And something bit her. Not hard. Just a nip, like a warning. She jerked back, her finger bleeding. A droplet hit the floor and sizzled. Then the walls moved again. All 4 of them. The nursery twisted inward, the wallpaper shriveling like burned skin, and suddenly the entire room seemed to be breathing, exhaling foul-smelling vapor from cracks in the wood. And then she saw it. In the mirror. Not her reflection, but something behind her, standing in the crib. A small, gray-skinned creature, half-formed and wet with mucus. It had clawed fingers, milky eyes, and its stomach was translucent, pulsing with worms. Its mouth opened. And it spoke. In her voice. Mommy. Emily turned around, but the crib was empty. Her heart thundered. The air was thick. The shadows had weight. She ran downstairs. Marcus and Kira looked up as Emily burst into the room, gasping. "It spoke to me," she said. "It's trying to get out." Kira's face darkened. "It's too soon. It's forcing its own birth." "No," Marcus said. "She's only 6 months." "She's no longer carrying a child," Kira interrupted. "She's carrying a doorway." The lights flickered. Then died. The whole house trembled, and from somewhere inside the walls, the sound of flesh tearing echoed. And a low, guttural cry. Emily dropped to her knees, her hands clutching her stomach, which was stretching outward, like something was pressing against it from inside. "We have to perform the rite," Kira shouted. "Now." The ritual. Kira led them to the basement, where a ceremonial circle had been drawn in ash, bone, and salt. In the center, a stone table, ancient and cracked, lay beneath a crude skylight, through which the moonlight pierced like a blade. Emily lay upon it, her skin cold and pale. Kira began to chant, louder than before, and Marcus lit the candles around the circle. The air shimmered. Emily screamed, her belly bubbling, splitting, not with blood but with black fluid that hissed on contact with the stone. Her eyes rolled back. "Something's wrong," Marcus yelled. From within her, the creature began to emerge, not like a normal birth, but clawing upward from her stomach, as if digging its way out of hell. Bones cracked. Blood sprayed across the walls. And it was no longer a fetus. It was something much older. Much more aware. It stared at them. Marcus raised the ceremonial dagger Kira had given him. But he couldn't move. His muscles locked. His eyes bled. The fetus spoke. "You were never its father," it said, voice echoing with 1,000 whispers. Then it looked at Emily, broken and screaming on the table. "You were just the gate." The candles blew out. And in the darkness, something massive stepped through. The house had stopped pretending. There was no more subtlety, no more creaking floorboards or flickering lights. Now, the walls breathed, slow, steady inhalations that pulsed through the drywall and baseboards like lungs exhaling steam. The pipes groaned with voices. The windows didn't show the outside world anymore, only darkness, thick and veined like flesh, pressed against the glass. Sophia stood in the center of the nursery, trembling. The soft pink wallpaper, once comforting, now pulsed with veins, each beat matching the rhythm of her unborn child's heartbeat, an arrhythmic, chaotic thudding that rattled her bones. She no longer needed an ultrasound to hear it. It was in her head now. Constant. Alive. Across the room, James was pinned against the closet door, eyes wide, shirt soaked in sweat. His lips trembled with the question he had asked too many times. "What the hell is inside you?" Sophia didn't answer. She couldn't. Because she knew. And it was still growing. The spiral. The days no longer had beginnings or endings. They blurred together like melted wax. Sophia barely remembered sleep. Food tasted like ash. Her skin itched from the inside. Something, no, someone, was trying to come through her body. Not just to be born, but to be unleashed. James had spent the last 48 hours poring over ancient texts he retrieved from Father Mallory's church, books the Vatican had banned, written in blood, bound in leather that felt too much like skin. One passage kept repeating itself. The host must bear the vessel until the veil thins. When flesh ruptures and innocence dies, the world within shall split the world without. He didn't want to believe what it meant, but there was no more room for denial. Sophia's baby wasn't just a child. It was a gateway. A living, gestating portal. Something ancient had crawled into her womb. The room that wasn't there before. James heard it before he saw it. A low humming from behind the mirror in their bedroom. At first, he thought it was the plumbing. But when he pressed his ear to it, the mirror breathed, just like the walls. Then the glass cracked. A hairline fracture appeared in the center and spread like spider veins across the entire surface. Behind it, something pulsed, not a reflection, but a membrane. Wet. Transparent. James stepped back. The mirror peeled open. Behind it, a narrow corridor slithered into darkness. It shouldn't have existed, there was no room for it between the walls. Yet it stretched on, impossibly long and low, just big enough for a person to crawl through. Sophia appeared behind him, clutching her stomach. Her eyes had changed, darker, sunken, her pupils dilated like twin tunnels. "He wants you to see," she whispered. "He wants you to know what's coming." James felt something inside him crack, something primal. But he nodded. He dropped to his knees and crawled into the passage. The walls closed behind him. Inside the womb. The tunnel pulsed. It wasn't made of wood or concrete. It was flesh. Moist. Living. He could feel it breathing around him, as if the entire corridor were a birth canal. A terrible, reverse delivery, he was crawling into something rather than out. The smell was unbearable. Copper. Rot. Amniotic fluid curdled with decay. He came upon carvings in the walls, scriptures in unknown languages. But the images were clear, women with grotesquely swollen bellies birthing impossible creatures, screaming infants tearing themselves free with claws and teeth, human sacrifices offered to shadows that watched from behind a veil. He kept crawling. Eventually, the tunnel widened into a chamber. In the center stood a cradle made of bone, wrapped in veins and thick cords like umbilical cables. Inside it was a mass of writhing tissue, twitching limbs, and teeth. Not yet born. But dreaming. The fetus turned toward James. Its eye opened. Not two. Not even one. Just an eye, the kind you'd find on the wrong end of the world. Something without beginning or end. Something that had watched extinction before Earth even existed. James screamed. The fetus smiled. And he woke up. The awakening. He was in bed. Sheets soaked in sweat. Sophia lay next to him, her belly pulsing violently. The heartbeat thumped against his hip like a hammer from the inside of her skin. "Did you see him?" she asked. James nodded slowly. Tears ran down his face. "We have to stop it," he said. Sophia closed her eyes. "It's too late." Suddenly, the house groaned, a low, wet snap echoing through the floorboards. Then a scream erupted from the basement. Not a human scream. Something lower. Guttural. Hungry. They ran. Down the hallway, into the living room, where the fireplace bled black smoke that smelled of afterbirth and sulfur. The floor was cracking, boards warping. A stain spread from beneath the carpet, dark red and pulsing. James lifted the rug. There was a hole. Not dug. Not burned. Just, there. Pulsing like a throat. Breathing. Alive. A voice called from inside it. Whispering, rasping. "Let me out." Possession. Sophia collapsed. Her body twisted in angles that shouldn't have been possible. Her belly swelled larger than it ever had. Her skin tore in fine, bloody lines. She screamed, voice guttural. James rushed to her, only to be flung backward by an invisible force that seared his chest like fire. When he looked up, Sophia was floating, arms slack, head tilted back, mouth wide open as a thick black mist poured from it. And the voice came again. "You were chosen, James." He backed away, shaking. "Why?" The voice laughed. The sound was pure rot, a vibration of despair. To give birth to the end. Sophia's eyes shot open, pitch black. Her mouth twitched into a grin not her own. And then she dropped. The moment she hit the ground, she vomited blood and bile. Her body convulsed violently. James crawled toward her, sobbing. "Sophia, stay with me." She grabbed his arm, her voice her own, barely. "You have to kill me, before he comes." James froze. He couldn't. He couldn't. And that was his mistake. The rupture. The air pressure in the house collapsed. Windows shattered inward. Mirrors imploded. Lights flickered and died. The walls peeled like dead skin, revealing pulsing layers beneath, muscle, tendon, and black-veined meat. The house wasn't just a house. It had become a womb. And it was time to deliver. Sophia screamed again, high, inhuman. Her belly exploded outward as blood and black fluid sprayed across the walls. But what emerged wasn't a baby. It was something ancient. Something dry and wrinkled, with limbs folded like insect legs and a face half-formed in agony. A fetus the size of a toddler, covered in teeth and viscera. It looked at James. And it knew him. It tilted its head, twitching in odd jerks. Then it smiled. "Daddy." James screamed and tried to run, but the walls closed. The door dissolved into muscle and blood. The windows blinked shut. The fetus crawled toward him on reversed limbs, dragging a shredded umbilical cord that twitched like a tail. "You don't get to leave," it whispered. "I'm not done growing." The hospital was bathed in chaos. Alarms screeched. Monitors flickered. Lights strobed red and white like the pulse of a dying heart. Nurses screamed. Doctors backed away from the blood-soaked maternity ward. The walls ran slick with afterbirth and something darker, thicker, oily, and alive. Lauren's legs were still strapped to the delivery table. Her skin was deathly pale, eyes rolled back, mouth gaping in an eternal silent scream. Her body was empty now, hollowed out by something that should never have been born. All that remained was the pulpy trail of gore, leading down to the cold tiles where the creature had slithered out. "Lauren!" James shrieked, pounding through the door just as the glass exploded outward from the force of something crashing through it. But Lauren didn't respond. Her body convulsed once and went still. The fetus, now a crawling, shrieking monstrosity, was no longer just a fetus. It had grown rapidly within seconds of birth, limbs stretching grotesquely, its spine contorting as it pushed itself upright. Its face was still vaguely human, Lauren's cheekbones, James's eyes, but its jaw unhinged with insectoid precision, revealing rows of glistening black fangs. It looked at James. And smiled. Then it lunged. James ducked instinctively, the beast flying past him and crashing into the hallway, tearing a nurse's throat out mid-scream. Blood sprayed across the walls like a watercolor of death. He ran to Lauren's side, gripping her cold hand. "Lauren, baby, please wake up." But her eyes were glazed, staring into the ceiling as though watching something on the other side of death. He heard it crawling through the air vents above. Metal creaked. Screws popped free and fell like teardrops to the floor. James stumbled back into the hallway, now painted with carnage. Bodies lay strewn, ripped open, skulls caved in, torsos gnawed through. The fetus thing was toying with them, dismembering with a child's glee. James ran. Down corridors, through swinging double doors. He had no plan, just an instinct to survive. Alarms continued to scream, but it wasn't just the fetus anymore. The walls were whispering. And pulsing. Like veins. He passed an empty nursery, cribs overturned, tiny blankets soaked red. Something moved behind him. He turned. The fetus stood in the middle of the hallway. It had grown taller, now nearly 4 feet. Its arms were too long, dragging claws that screeched against the floor. Its chest bulged and split with every breath, revealing something squirming beneath the skin. It was still growing. Still evolving. Still hungry. Why us? James sobbed, backing away. What did we do? The creature cocked its head. And spoke. You called me, it said in a gurgling voice that sounded like wet gravel. You opened the door. And James remembered. The chanting on the recording, the ancient rites, the cursed bloodline Lauren's grandmother had whispered about in her final breath. The cult. The bones. The voice in Lauren's dreams. They hadn't just conceived a child. They had summoned one. He turned and ran again. The fetus roared, high-pitched, unnatural, and gave chase. James ducked into an elevator, slamming the door button. The doors began to close, but the creature's claw jammed between them. Sparks flew. James kicked at it. Again. And again. With a final scream, he slammed a fire extinguisher down on its hand. Bones crunched, and the doors slid shut. Darkness. Elevator humming downward. James collapsed to the floor, gasping. That wasn't his son. That wasn't Lauren's baby. That was something else, something that had chosen them. A vessel. A womb. A way into this world. He remembered the old text in the priest's journal. The anti-womb shall bear the crimson seed. And the seed shall become the first of the devourers. He knew now, Lauren had been the anti-womb. And the fetus was the crimson seed. The elevator dinged. Basement. James stepped out into the hospital morgue, cold and reeking of formaldehyde. He grabbed a bone saw from the tool tray, gripping it tight. His hands shook violently. He knew he wouldn't survive this. But he could try to stop it. Footsteps above. Thuds. Screams. It was coming. He moved deeper into the morgue, finding the incinerator, used for unclaimed bodies. A steel coffin that burned at 1,000 degrees. His plan formed, desperate and suicidal. Lure the thing inside. Burn it. Burn it alive. The door above burst open. The walls shook. Lights flickered and exploded. And then, there it was. The fetus creature stood in the doorway, taller now. 6 feet. Ribcage cracked open, revealing a glowing red core. Flesh peeled back across its shoulders, exposing raw muscle. Its eyes were fully black now, bottomless pits of hunger and rage. Daddy, it cooed. I'm hungry. James backed toward the incinerator. You want to eat? Fine. Come get it. It charged. James dove aside, the thing crashing into the incinerator with a howl. He slammed the door shut, pulled the lever. Flames exploded to life inside. The fetus shrieked, an unholy sound, shrill and layered, like 1,000 voices dying at once. It clawed at the inside of the steel door, sparks flying, the walls of the room vibrating with the force of its death throes. James collapsed to his knees, sobbing. And for a moment, just one. He believed it was over. But then. The incinerator door bulged. Steel screeched. The screaming stopped. Silence. Then. A heartbeat. From inside. Slow. Deliberate. Then a crack. The door shattered, blown off its hinges. And from the fire emerged not the fetus. But a boy. A small child. Naked. Skin white as ash. Hair dark and wet. Eyes pure black. He stepped barefoot out of the flames, unharmed. Looked at James. And smiled again. You can't kill what's already born in hell, he whispered. James screamed as the boy lifted one small hand. And the walls of the morgue bent inward like paper. 1 year later. The town was gone. Everyone said it was a chemical explosion. A gas leak. A tragic accident. But those who saw the boy said different. They spoke of a child walking through fire. A child whose eyes turned men insane. A child who drank blood. The government came. Covered it up. Built fences. Burned the evidence. But evil cannot be buried. Especially not when it wears the face of a child. Some say he still walks the backroads, appearing in the back seats of cars, or at the windows of nurseries. Some say he's growing stronger every day. The first of the devourers. And somewhere, far away, a woman wakes from a nightmare. She is pregnant. And inside her womb, something is moving. The end.